Welcome to Succession Stories. I'm Lori Barkman. As an exit value planning and M&A advisor, I call myself the Business Transition Sherpa. This podcast guides entrepreneurs from transition to transaction, from building value in your business to letting go. What do I do when I'm not hosting a podcast? I work with owners to maximize business value with my firm, Small.Big. And as a certified mergers and acquisitions advisor with Stony Hill, I guide you through the complex process of selling your company. Tune into Succession Stories for weekly insights to reward your hard work and avoid succession regrets. Hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and sign up for our newsletter at successionstories.com. Here's to your success. Is this the year to sell your company? Don't leave your exit to chance. Stony Hill Advisors works with entrepreneurs like you to get ready for what may be the biggest transaction of your life. Learn what your business is worth by visiting stonyhilladvisors.com/podcast. Gabriela Isturiz is a tech entrepreneur who sold 2 SaaS businesses to Fortune 500 companies. Gaby is one of the few women in STEM who has led bootstrapped companies to successful exits. She was the founder and president of eBilling Hub, pioneer of electronic billing for law firms worldwide, and sold the company to Thomson Reuters in 2011. Just 8 years later, Gaby sold her second tech company, Billafield Systems, in 2019. After her last exit, Gaby launched the Fund XX, a venture fund investing in the next generation of women-led startups. I enjoyed my conversation with Gaby for many reasons. It's an impressive entrepreneurial story that hits on the core themes of this show: innovation, growth, and transition. We discussed how to find a market niche by solving customer pain points and innovating in a mature industry. We also talked about running an M&A bid process to generate multiple offers. Listen in to hear why the highest bidder is not always the best buyer for your company. Enjoy this episode with my guest, Gaby Isturiz. Gaby Isturiz, it is so lovely to have you on the show today. Welcome to Succession Stories.
Thank you for having me, Lori. I was looking forward to be with you today.
We are both in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's how we met. And I feel so fortunate to have met you recently at a conference. And when we were talking, it became very clear to me how impressive and successful you have been in your career. And you're doing some very exciting things now that you are an investor. So you're a successful entrepreneur. I want to mention for the audience, you're one of a few women in STEM who has not only bootstrapped her company to a successful exit, you've done that twice. And that is amazing. I can't wait to hear your story. Why don't we dive in with your first company, which was called eBilling Hub. And I think this is a super interesting story because you innovated in a space, legal, right? That was a very mature and is a very mature industry, very well established. But this is an innovation story for legal tech, and your first firm was eBilling Hub. Can you give me the background? I'm so curious to learn more.
Yes, absolutely. So a little bit of my background, Lori. I'm originally from Venezuela, Caracas, and I like to say I came to the United States for 2 years, 26 years ago. So I never left.
You never left.
So I had the opportunity to go to the University of Pittsburgh to do my master's degree in information science. And then I was hired by a large law firm, one of the largest law firms in insurance defense. And insurance defense is well known by the amount of cases. We're talking about pretty much 20 years ago, and they have this need, this new thing. Electronic billing was a new thing. Basically, law firms, they needed to submit all their invoices through a channel. Imagine like an EDI, but for law firms. And with some sort of parameters and rules to get the bills, not in paper, but in electronic format. So it was very nascent a concept. So part of the reason why they hired me is because at the time they have thousands and thousands of bills that needed to go electronically that someone was typing by hand in an electronic format, right? So I kind of like did a lot of research, Lori, and I couldn't find anything. In my background, I'm a software engineer, right? And just by the fact that you can write code, I call it you get some superpowers, right? So I developed this solution. A little bit of my background, even though that I'm a software engineer, my specialty was in building in-house solutions. So I built this great solution for the law firm, adding a lot of value. And I always have this entrepreneur in me since I was little. So I said, there is a commercial, there is a huge opportunity here that we need to go after. So I went to my boss, an amazing person, an amazing lawyer. He passed away and he was one of my greatest mentors. And he said, Gaby, absolutely, you can do this commercially. And as long as you don't leave the firm, right? Because do your thing, right? And, and we want to retain you. So I was at the firm for 10 years. So that speaks a little bit of the bond that we had and the amazing place they were to work for. So a little bit of that. So we agreed that I could do something commercial. There was a lot of trust, right? But I don't think, to your point of innovation, I don't think they saw this as a real opportunity, right? It was a little bit like, hey, Gaby wants to do this, right? We cannot afford to lose her. Knock yourself out and have a passion project, right? So I didn't have any legalities around that. Right? So, pretty much all the invention was myself, but we kind of like, when things were a little bit getting more serious, right? I went to my boss and said, I think, we need to do this a little bit more serious. And he said, yeah, whatever, right? Give us a little bit of a percentage, right? Whatever, it's fine, right? So they let me continue doing the company. In grad school, I met my business partner who came to be my husband of 20 years. And because he also was at Pitt, he was a software engineer, neural networks at Pitt. He knew how to build commercial software. So we kind of like a partner, we're going to build commercial software, right? We're going to take these. And my boss was, yes, that's fine, right? So a little bit of that. I continued to working for the firm. And Danny left his job at the University of Pittsburgh. So that's how we started.
That is incredible. I have to rewind on just a few things to just underscore. I worked in a law firm for a few years and I understand the dynamics. There's a lot of paper, right? Especially if this is, what year was this? This was
2002.
2002. So we have to put ourselves back in time. There's a lot of paper moving. There's a lot of dollars at stake. What you did was you identified some pain points. If we look at the market need, your market, you had a captive audience for a pilot. You found product market fit in the law firm. You knew that there was pain. You knew that there was value. And then you created a product that, how many lawyers roughly? 100 plus?
Probably 150 to 100. Yes.
So you could develop this product, commercialize the product kind of, right, within the law firm, prove it out, and then you were given the latitude to go commercialize this software platform. That's amazing. And I am admiring not only the law firm's, I guess, willingness to support that they found it effective internally and they used it, but then also to give you that latitude to run with it. That took a lot of time. How did you, Gaby, how did you do that? You were managing a startup as well as maintaining your role at the law firm.
Yes, and totally. I was so passionate about, solving this problem, building this company, right? And I'm very passionate about the challenges that I had at a law firm, right? That I didn't feel it, Lori, like I was a chore, right? I was doing what I love to do, right? I think when you're doing what you love, right? It's like that saying that you're not working, right? And I felt that way. And even fast forward 20 years after or more, I don't feel like I was working. I was just having fun.
It's incredible. So when you spun it out and at some point you found it was time to sell, how did you know when it was time to sell? And what were some of the deal dynamics with I think you'd sold to I'd call it a strategic buyer. I don't know if you ended up talking to financial buyers as well, but maybe you could just share a little bit about that time frame and what was happening.
Yeah, so it was a very interesting process. I mean, we were super young. This is 20 some years ago, right? And it ended up being that one of the partners of the law firm, right, saw the opportunity and got for a little tiny piece, bought the interest of the law firm, right? So the law firm kind of like went away, right? And we had a partner, right, that was retiring. At the beginning, right, we were super excited, right? It's going to open these many opportunities, right? But our interests were not aligned. I mean, we were building something revolutionary. And even, Lori, I mean, this is back in 2000, 2002, the word SaaS was not even invented yet, right? So remember that in 1999, 2000, Salesforce put the word SaaS. So we were calling our solution application service providers, right?
Right.
And, we were the first SaaS for law firms. There was already SaaS for these civil inventors getting the bills, but we were the first one, right? So, I mean, we knew the size, the amount of the opportunity, right? And, he was pretty much retiring. We were starting pretty much our entrepreneurial journey. Once we kind of like find this market fit, and kind of like let me make a parenthesis, it took us about 3 to 4 years to make our 40 first customers. And then after we partnered with Thomson Reuters, and there's some drama there, we got our next 100 customers in a year.
Wow.
I mean, totally a hockey stick, right? And we started generating a lot of revenue, right? We were already very, very profitable. So our interests were not aligned. We wanted to keep it going. We wanted to catch up, right? And pretty much we sold too early, in my view.
Really?
But it was a great journey. We learned a lot, right? But yeah.
And it sold to a division of Thomson Reuters, is that correct?
It was a Thomson Reuters Legal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we should probably just share, I mean, Thomson Reuters in the legal space is the 800-pound gorilla. They are dominant and they have a lot of great software that law firms use.
Yes.
And you had a partnership with them. Was that a strategic move? Did you envision at some point that they might be the acquirer because of that partnership?
Yes. And yeah, Lori, but let me tell you a little bit about the journey to get there, right? Because it sounds very romantic, right? Yeah, we did a partnership, right? They were interested and they bought us, right? A little bit of, we knew that we have something incredibly innovative. So I went to talk to the CIO of Thomson Reuters Legal to look for a partnership. And he was so impressed with that. I pretty much, very naive. I kind of like spilled all this secret sauce, right? And, you could see, right, that they were not figure this problem out the way we did, right? So he said, yeah, Gaby, it's incredible what you're doing. I would love to partner with you, right? So, I mean, we were incredibly ecstatic, right? I mean, hey, this 800-pound gorilla, is partnering with the little guys, right?
Right.
So then they went silent, Lori. It was, 2 weeks, they don't respond. 3 weeks, they don't respond, right? So I'm continue, my outreach, my outbound, and nothing happens, right? So the next thing that we knew is when I saw a press release, they had launched a competitive product.
Oh, wow. That is so incredible. We hear about that, it's like the mythical unicorn animal, and you hear this story, and now, wow, you actually encountered that. Because I say to the people, what matters the most is the conversation, not necessarily when you're in the room, but when you leave the room, they're trying to figure out if they could replicate what you do.
That's exactly what it is, right? So, I mean, if they can figure it out, we can too, right? So, I mean, it's kind of like a playbook, Lori. So they're going to try because, of course, they have pretty much unlimited resources and they have pretty much unlimited access to great talent, right? How come we're not going to do it? So what happened was, right, I was devastated, totally devastated. So my business partner, Danny, said, you know what, Gaby, this is great. And it's great because if they're able to try to copy what we're doing, that it's a proof that they know how to do this, right? So what we need to do is we're going to beat them in the market, because the playbook is they're going to try to do it, right? You start taking customers, they don't do it as nimble or as innovative the way you can do it. And the reason is we make decisions faster, right? And we're only focused solving what problem, while they have, these many departments, these many products, right? And so we have let's call it an unfair advantage, right? So we knew, Lori, that it was impossible for them to do something better than ours, right? Not with all the resources, because we were thinking how to fix this problem day in and day out, right? So we said, okay, we're going to beat them in the market. And that's what happened, right? They paralyzed the market, right? Because when they announce it, okay, so we go, it's like the saying, nobody got fired buying from IBM, exactly the same thing, right?
Right.
So, right, we have early adopters, right? People that understood that they couldn't innovate the way we did, right? And we start getting our lighthouse accounts, right? And that once we got, another 40 out of their portfolio, their solution wasn't selling as great as it was, right? They say, okay, let's partner. And once we partner,
okay.
Yes.
So how much time did it take for them to launch?
About 6 to a month.
In that time, it was also probably a good marketing for your company, because they were validating that this was a worthy service and you were already established in the market.
Yes. Yeah. And it was more mature, right? We had a library of Evelyn templates, right? And so, yeah, but it's a playbook, right? They're going to try to do it, right? You beat them in the market, because now we earned the place, right, to partner with them, because there was no risk. The product was already in one of the largest law firms in the world, right? And then, so we did an OEM. Not only once we came with Thomson Reuters, right? Adern and some other Roper Tech, right? And some other practice management system came along, right? So we have these incredibly relationships, not with Thomson, but with the others, right? And what happened was it opened the doors to really scale this. So, it really, really worked. So, because even though that they say we're going to sell your product, right? And probably this is something for the audience. So when you go into a reseller or an OEM mode, right? It's great on the ability to open doors, but nobody's going to sell your product. Nobody is going to carry the message the way you do. So, yes, they were kind of like a broker. And once they kind of generating the leads within the law firms, right, we will go and do the sale. So we needed to give him, a high percentage, typically when you do these resellers and OEM, right? And also we had a sales force to deploy to maximize, right, the success rate of our deals.
It was a lead generation arrangement.
Right.
Because they were cross-selling and then they got a percent of the sale, but your sales team were the ones who would close.
Yeah, and do the demos and do
the demos and everything.
The sales process. Yeah.
That's important. And did you have to spell all of that out in the partnership agreement?
No. We kind of learned that along the way. And the biggest lesson is when you do this reseller, their sales force, they have a bag of products, and your product is one in the bag, right? So how do you differentiate yourself, right? So we kind of became an advocate in support of their sales force, basically.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so for example, we will provide all the messaging, right? All the marketing material, and we try to control the sales process, right? So we had a team just to do the demos for them, so they didn't have to learn it, and we were very passionate, right? Which is hard to convey. So we made the most out of the relationship, And it worked so well that we replicate the same with the other OEMs and partnerships that we did.
So it wasn't exclusive.
It wasn't exclusive.
Oh, okay. So that's also important.
Yeah.
And then at what point, you mentioned earlier, you had another owner of the business. So it was yourself, your partner, your husband, and then there was another individual who influenced a sale.
Yes.
Can you talk about that dynamic? Because I think that's pretty interesting. Can you go a little bit deeper?
Yeah. And again, we learned a lot. One of the things that we learned is that we were so excited of doing this partnership with this partner, right? Or let's say, a partner that we didn't go deep into the legalities of the arrangement, right? So our legal structure and our legal arrangement was very, very loose, right? And then we were not savvy enough in terms of valuations and all that, right? So, it was a savvy litigation lawyer, right? And so he had an advantage on negotiating, to their favor, right? So, we pretty much were forced to sell. And, because of the lack of legal structure to protect us.
Interesting. And so the lesson learned there for a founder who wants to bring on an investor would be to really make sure that they have an attorney who is thinking through their interests.
Yeah, right. Because he was the one that we trusted to look for our interest, and we were naive, right? So you gotta have someone that is gonna look for your interest.
Who is your most important customer? The person who buys your business. Stony Hill Advisors works with owners to maximize the value when you're ready to sell. Get started today with a business valuation by visiting stonyhilladvisors.com/podcast. So time to sell, there was that dynamic. And how did you decide that you wanted to sell and who to sell to? Did you approach Thomson Reuters and say, look, we think we're a great fit. Are you interested in buying us? Did you go to Aderant and others as well?
Yeah. So what happened was, right, because this solution was so unique. And we were even surprised that even after 5, 6, 7 years, right, no one in the industry will come up with a competitive product. So, the market was ours, right? So the clients were ours, right? And it became the leading solution in the world for e-billing. So what happens was, right, Thomson Reuters approach us, Aderant, and pretty much everybody else kind of like approach us to go a little bit more into even Wolters Kluwer. We became an acquisition target from the usual suspects already. So we knew, any of these publicly traded companies were going to be the target. And a little bit kind of like to summarize, right? So you have the idea, you innovate, they're going to try to do what you're doing because why not, right? You start getting the clients and they're going to buy you because, they are limited in the ability that they have to innovate, right? For example, Lori, by the time that they will have to get a business case approved, right? We already had 2 versions of the software out, right? And and they know that, right? But you gotta prove yourself, right? And then you become an acquisition target. And that's what we did.
Right. Gotcha. And so did you have any outside help at this point? Did you hire an intermediary to help? You're still running your company day to day, and this is going to now take a lot of time. Or did you run point yourself?
It was a little bit kind of like the first time around, it was incredibly flattering, right? That you have, these many unsolicited offers, right? And at that point, we didn't think about an investment banker or anything like that, right? This is something that we can do, right? We know a bunch of lawyers, and we will do. So yeah, it was a very organic and ill thought out, I will say.
And how long did the process take from when you were getting the unsolicited offers to actually closing?
Yeah, it was probably 6 to 9 months.
Okay, pretty long process. And
Yeah.
can we talk about the deal itself? Because what were you doing in revenue roughly around that time?
We were probably about 6 or 7.
Okay, and 100% SaaS recurring revenue business. So I'm assuming you sold at a multiple of revenue and you were negotiating multiples of revenue.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
and every vertical has their own range based on growth, right? Based on revenue, right? Based on EBITDA, right? And there, it's very consistent across the board
Yeah.
in this industry.
So you don't have to disclose what the multiple was, but sometimes in this industry, it's 10x. So it can be a pretty sizable number for companies. And there's reasons to be above or below some of those benchmarks, of course. What were some of the main dynamics that you found in the negotiation? Did they want you to stay on and have an earnout? Was it the founders were out at closing? What were some of the things that were important to you or important to them?
Yeah, I mean, the first experience, it was very difficult experience, right? And there was litigation involved. So part of the deal was, we're not coming over the transition, and because of the conditions were, like I said, we were not aligned, right?
Okay.
And we learned a lot, but yeah, so it was a different kind of like acquisition because it was there was litigation involved.
There was litigation between your firm and Thomson Reuters?
No, in our partner.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
So how did you feel when the day came, the closing? Did you feel excitement? Were you sad? Because this is your baby. You'd been working with this company. You bootstrapped it with your husband. What were some of the emotions that you were feeling at the time?
It was not good. I mean, it was kind of like a sense of loss. But I mean, we knew, right, that there is a better opportunity waiting for us, right? So this is our first attempt into this. We did that really well. And let's take all our learnings, right, and do that better. And we did. So I think in a way, Lori, I don't regret any of the experiences other than have a better legal framework around, right? But everything else, right, it really made us stronger, right? We learned a lot that probably otherwise we would have not learned, right? And with the second company, we pretty much engineer a company that we wanted to build and exit. And we were very deliberate in how gross margins were going to be, EBITDA margins, growth, recurrent revenue, right? And and every other metric, right? So, for example, Lori, we understood that not every revenue is good revenue, right? So we favor, going 90% for the recurring, right? And anything that was not recurrent, that was our giveaway. Like you can discount to the salespeople, you can discount the setup fee, right? But we don't discount the recurrent revenue because we were evaluated on that, right? So, and we did it in about 7 years, probably 6-7 years. We grew that company, to the point that we also became an acquisition target.
That's incredible. So this is Bellafield Systems now.
Yes.
And you took a little bit of time off between the two startups, but not much. Wasn't it about a year or 2 years?
Yes, it was a year. Yes, exactly.
A year. So you weren't prevented from working in the legal tech space. You weren't prevented from creating another entity that was going to compete with Thomson Reuters.
Yeah, so we were not prevented we were prevented from creating a very similar solution in that space. So we couldn't create another e-billing or the like.
So Bellafield was timekeeping.
It was timekeeping. And yes, which it's kind of like it's very interesting, right? Because all lawyers have been keeping time, right, since the 1940s, right, when the practice, they realized, and there is some history there, right? So there was nothing really innovative there, right? So with the first company, we really created a market that didn't exist, right?
Right.
This one, it was already there, right? And a little bit on that, Lori, when you create a market, part of the challenge, what it took us a little bit longer, is because we needed to educate the market to something that they never did, right? Kind of like using a SaaS solution, right, to send bills electronically as opposed to printing and sending out, right? This one, they were already used to that. But what we did is bring innovation in how they keep their time. So our first solution was the iPad. The iPad, when we came, we started seeing lawyers with iPads. We started seeing law firms buying iPads, and they didn't know what to do with that, right? There were not apps for iPads for legal, right? So they could use like a notability, right? And they could use their email, right? So we said, right, there is a huge opportunity. So let's do only timekeeping for iPads. That's it. And that's how it started. And then, hey, can you do it for the iPhone? Yeah, I think we can, right? And then how about Android? And so the vision always was, right, we want to own the lawyer experience when it comes for them to recover in time. And we built a whole company that just started kind of like an anywhere mobile solution, right? Then we became a desktop solution anywhere. And then we put compliance into that. So, but Lori, we have this vision. We knew that we wanted to get the market out of the mobility and take the kind of like ride the wave of Apple and the innovation. But we knew that there was a very great vision behind it, right? In a much bigger game. So the compliance came about, right? So they could enter, let's say, an entry, a time entry, right? And immediately it was going to be validated. Okay, the client is not going to pay for this, right? So immediately we had the intelligence, right, and the knowledge to, make sure that everything that you put in was compliant. And we kind of like a pioneer that as well.
That's awesome. So many times we hear about tech that is tech first and then it tries to solve a pain point. You understood the market really well. You understood the lawyer's workflow and where they had ups and downs in their day. And no one enjoys timekeeping, let's face it, but it was the way we always do it. You found a pain point, you had a market need, and you saw the opportunity to build and differentiate, which is really incredible. So in this space, you were able to do it twice, one around the electronic billing and one around the timekeeping. What's fascinating also, because I did spend a little bit of time, not as many years as you, but I did spend a couple of years in a law firm. And, lawyers are not really known for being super tech savvy. Now, of course, there's lots of people who are, so I'm not trying to generalize too much. But if we put ourselves back into this time period, also not typically early adopters of tech, right? Did you find that the training was something that you had to think about for the users and their use cases, or was it just so easy to use and pick up that the lawyers just ran with it?
Yeah, I love this question, right? Because it brings my passion out, right? So something that we learned by being kind of like insiders, it's lawyers are incredibly smart. And incredibly skilled because they speak for a living, right? They make deals for a living, right? So because of that, right, I always challenge lawyers and accountants, right? Because we also had accountants using our solution. They are not averse to technology. They just averse to technology that is not easy to use. Right? So our only thing is how can we make this incredibly simple for them? And that's how, we grew so quickly. In 12 months, we already profitable. And, we already have 500 law firms in 2 years, right?
Wow.
It was because it was so simple, not only for the lawyer to use, but so simple to deploy. that a large law firm of 500 lawyers, they could be up and running in a day and a half, which was so part of our mantra. It's how we can remove resistance from the lawyers adopting the technology and from the IT in operations department to implement it.
Makes a lot of sense. So a similar story here, because this company, the difference was you said you were building it to sell from the beginning. So there was probably less of an emotional attachment to Bellafield than there was to your first company, I'm guessing. But here you, in this situation, I think I heard you on an interview where you were on another show, and you talked about, I think it was the Built to Sell show that you did with John Warlow, and you talked about hiring an advisor. And so now this is your second time around. You've been through it. Why didn't you say, oh, we can do this ourselves again?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So in 2018, which was 1 year prior to the sale, we got 3 or 4 unsolicited offers, and actually term sheets and all that, right? And the company was a lot bigger. There was a lot at stake. And even that we were flattered, right? So we kind of decided, okay, let's entertain, let's look at that, right? Well, let's have some meetings. But then we kind of realized there is too much complexity here, right? So, I was super focused, growing making our revenue goals, right? Growing the company. And that we say, okay, I'm not ready to entertain any of these, right? So in 2019, because we were growing a lot, right? So I decided to get investment banker to help us do an equity growth round. So we were not even thinking about selling the 100% yet, right? And part of the strategy was, so we have a lot of time and energy and in everything invested in here, that is wise to take some chips off the table. So there was a lot of appetite from private equity to do that. And we kind of met every metric that private equity that invest in SaaS, right? So we have the growth, we have the revenue, we have the EBITDA. And we have this magic number that anybody can Google, right? But it was basically the ratio between revenue and marketing and sales. We became very, very attracted to private equities, right? So, but because we knew the potential, we said, okay, so let's go ahead and shop around and let's find the best deal. I believe, Lori, that without our advisors, our strategic advisors, and our investment banker, we would have done the deal that we did. Never.
And you ended up selling the whole company.
And we end up selling. So, and I cannot treasure enough the value that our strategic team and our investment banker brought to the table. And they earn every penny.
Oh, that's amazing. So did you go into this with an expectation of annual recurring revenue multiple? And I know I said 10x earlier, and that's probably much higher given your first company and the time period. So I'm guessing that that's not a number we want to anchor to. But in this scenario, was it somewhere around that neighborhood? Was it less than that you thought you would sell for?
We knew the number, right? Because we knew the market. We already had a prior experience. So what happened, Lori, was because of we closed the deal in 45 days.
Wow. That's fast.
And with Thanksgiving in between, right? Couple of things to say to that, right? So I was extremely diligent and organized. In even everything was kind of a by the book, Lori, in terms of, there are nothing obscure, right? There are no secondary set of books, right? There is no messy operations, right? So it was a very well-oiled machine, right? So when the investment bankers comes, right? So they didn't have to deal with, okay, there is no contract here, right? The company, there is no proper incorporation here there, right? So they came in just to add value. It took us about a month and a half or two to get the story together, to get the book together. And once they have the book together, right, they were very, very effective in identifying potential partners, right? And I remember when the first round, we got about 60 NDAs interested in learning more. And then, we started narrowing it down, and we ended up with 12 offers that were worth considering. So what our investment banker, Brock Mathias and LRA in Atlanta, he created a very honest bidding situation.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that I was most impressed by, right, he will never influence my decision, right? He just presented the fact, right? So he never took any side, right? But he educated me to make the best decision, right? And I think with a great investment banker shows, right? Because, his job was supporting our organization, not making a decision for us.
Yes. And by having a bidding process, you were probably able to get them to play off each other in a way that, as you said, it was honest. That's part of the process when you have kind of an auction, let's call it, where these different companies are interested in you and they're interested in getting a deal, and it's a negotiation. So there's always that room perhaps for them to raise their prices and get to a point where you say yes. So I'm guessing that worked out pretty well for you.
That's a little bit of what happened, right? We knew that by getting the company to this with these KPIs, we knew the number, right? But thanks to this competitive situation, right, we were blown away by the final offers.
That's great.
And, but Lori, something, and again, I'm super passionate. Kind of like going through this again, right? Because we were extremely lucky. So then we took these 12 offers to 4 and then to 3. One of them was a strategic buyer. The 2 of them, it was incredible private equities, right? That I have very dear to my heart. And then, Lori, because you bond with these, right? You have an honest relationship with them, right? That it became extremely hard to make a decision, right? Because, there was no wrong decision, right? Each one will add enormous value on their way, right? My husband and partner, he supported me also to make the decision, right? So, so I went to my advisors, right? I went to my executive coach just to get a little bit of advice, right? And in part of my decision-making framework, it's all these are amazing private equities, amazing companies, right? Just there is a win, right? But how do I feel that it's going to be my employees are going to thrive, right? And I already had a relationship with Roper and Aaron, right? And Aaron had a female CEO, right? That I really respect and treasure. And I think, there was so much respect and so much trust that, I knew that I wanted them to be my home.
So it wasn't only about the highest bidder.
And we didn't take the highest. We didn't.
That's super interesting. I've heard that as well. So almost, again, like this mythical thing you hear about. And here we are, that was your situation. That's fascinating. Yeah. So the culture of the company, the prior relationship, the fit for your employees, you and your husband decided to probably not stay on, I'm guessing, but you wanted your team to have a sustainable future with this entity. And so it was Adder and Roper.
Yes. And not only that, right? It's our values were absolutely aligned, Lori. Very different from our first experience, right? So when we came in into the negotiation, Lori, and probably you're familiar because you've done this, many, many times, right? We were all for a win-win, right? There were no shenanigans, right? There was no hidden, right? Every day we'll come in to reviewing documents, right? And everybody was putting their best, right? So we wanted this to succeed. There was no chance in our mind that this deal was not going to go forward. That was not an option, right? So we kind of like have to kind of like overcome some hurdles, right? And but kind of like having the desire to really succeed at this transaction, it made it super easy. And kind of like as the result, we closed a deal in 45 days.
That's amazing. And around Thanksgiving. That's just incredible. Highly, highly motivated buyers. And kudos to you and your team for really being ready. And that speaks volumes to the process, because the more ready we are for a transition, the more options we're going to create. And your story 100% illustrates that point. I want to jump to what you're doing today, because it fuels your passion and mission in a different direction. And after you sold, you took like a week off, right? No, I'm kidding. You took some time off, hopefully to enjoy. Did you do some travel?
We were, because Danny and I were grinding for 20 years, right? And we decided to go to Europe for 6 months. And we were set to go March 10th of 2020. And the next day it was a lockdown, so we couldn't go.
So you had a staycation. So like the rest of us.
I have no job, because we already completed the transition from December to March, right? Yeah. With Aaron and Robert, right? So I was pretty much in my house, right? With my kids, and without pretty much anything that I knew and I loved to do, I was not doing any of that.
Yeah. That was a tough time.
It was super bittersweet, right?
Yeah.
And a little bit of kind of like how the serendipity of life, right? So I became kind of like someone knew that I was available, right? And they say, well, you're a female founder, you're a minority founder, talk to Gaby, right? She just sold her company, right? And there was another, and all of a sudden I was advising 10, 12 companies, amazing founders, amazing female founders. I started angel investing in them because I believe in some founders so much. And that led me to be part of a fund and become an LP of one fund, right? As I was doing the advising, and then through this, I have the opportunity to start my own fund, right? But it was kind of like a non-plan, right? It just happened,
Very organic. So the people knew, they started reaching out. And interesting too, because as I said in your introduction, you bootstrapped your first two companies. You didn't have experience with venture capitalists. Right. They weren't on your board. And now you are a VC. And it's an interesting juxtaposition, right? Because now you're looking to support women in a industry, the field of venture capital, where the percentages are pretty low, aren't they, for VC investments going to women founders? It's like 2%, some really low number.
Less than 2% for female-led startup. Yes, it's very sad. And on the other side, right, on the VC, only less than 12% are female making decisions on investments. So there's a long way to go, but and that's why I love so much what I'm doing.
So the name of the fund is the Fund XX. So there's a little bit of controversy about the name, I understand, but let's talk about the positioning of the fund and how you support women investors. And if we, as listeners, are hearing this and they're thinking about, oh, I know someone that might be a fit for talking with you or connecting with you, maybe give us a sense of the types of investors that the fund looks to support.
Yes, and in terms of LPs and investors, we are incredibly proud to say that 90% of our investors are female. And even some very qualified people that didn't have the chance to be part of a venture fund before. So in a way, we're trying to democratize the investment and be part of the VC investors community, right? And again, I think we're done something that few others have done in Pittsburgh. The Nexat Fund, Yvonne, right? I mean, we share the same philosophy, right? And they were also very successful in having female investors, right? But on the investment side, as we deploy capital to our founders, our investment thesis is we want to support the next generation of female leaders. So we only invest in companies where the CEO is a female. So that's kind of like we decided to draw a line on the sand, right? Because we want to support the leaders. And then we participate in rounds that are between $500,000 and $1.5 million, right? Because we invest in pre-seed and seed rounds only. And kind of like lastly, we look at the founders, Lori. Do they have the DNA? Do they have the domain knowledge, right? Do they have the grit? And I like to say the integrity, right? That we want to support. And in addition to that, right, we invest because we all come from technology. We invest in tech-enabled companies that we believe, right, that can provide the returns that our fund seeks out.
Excellent. And is this US only?
For now, it's US only, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that's excellent. And I'm so excited for you, Gaby. You are a wealth of knowledge, a ton of experience. I know there's a lot of things that inspire you, and you inspire so many. Is there a favorite quote that you turn to every now and then to give you inspiration?
Yeah, I think it's even kind of like a little bit of a mantra, and it's from Aristotle, right? It's like it goes like we are what we repeatedly do. So therefore, excellent, right, is not an act, it's an habit, right? And I kind of like our culture in our two companies, it was, around excellence and respect for others. And, I believe that we can achieve great things when we try to put excellence in everything that we do.
I love that. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
LinkedIn, I mean, there are not too many Gabriela Isturiz out there, right? So I'm very easy to find. And for any female founder, right, minority founder that wants to reach out, right, I'm very accessible. So it's just don't be afraid to ask, just go and ask. Okay. And if I can add value, right, and I'm passionate about what the founders are building, chances are that we are going to connect.
I think I have some female founders to send your way.
Please do.
I'll be connecting you. Gaby, thank you so much for coming on Succession Stories and sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me, and I enjoyed thoroughly. Thanks.
And so to the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. You can always catch Succession Stories on any of your favorite podcast players or on YouTube. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. If you want to maximize the value of your business and plan for future transition, reach out to me for a complimentary assessment at meetloribarkman.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more insights from transition to transaction. And until then, here's to your success. My objective is for you to have a lucrative and successful succession. If you want to understand the value of your company today, that's a great place to start. The sooner you understand what creates value and what detracts from it, the more time you'll have to close the gap if there is one. Hundreds of business owners have taken my complimentary business assessment. As a first step, schedule a call with me by visiting meetloribarkman.com. That's meetloribarkman.com.